We did tonight. Why did we have a meeting last week? We did. No, last Tuesday. Oh, no, we didn't. Oh, we didn't. I thought we did. No. Got all these points.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We'll call our meeting to order here. Start off with our Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to take a brief moment of silence for the loss of our longtime MPSD social studies teacher, John Rickey. Thank you. Just keep your thoughts and prayers with him and his family. And could we call roll?
Christopher Abel.
Here.
Biff Hansen.
Here.
Matthew Phipps.
Here.
Stacy Seldner.
Here.
Matthew Spalding.
Here.
Carrie Trask.
Here.
And Tony Bostelka.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the next is our consent agenda. Is there anything that anyone would like removed from the consent agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none, I will look for a motion and a second.
Take a motion.
Okay, Matthew Phipps.
I'll second.
Okay, second, Chris Sable. Okay, and all those in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, our report of the superintendent and Director Tennis will present on the school perception, student and parent feedback.
Yes, thank you and good evening, everybody. If you'll recall back, Mr. Nault did a presentation on our school perception staff survey that was done, sometime, around the same time as this, and you got that information, I believe it was in August. This is the information from our students and our parent surveys. I had a memo that I had sort of highlighted some things from the results that you could take a look at as we work our way through the results. I thought I'd just kind of walk through the presentations, a lot of slides, and I know that you were able to look at things. I just want to make sure that you know and understand the context differences between the student survey and the parent survey in terms of there's a different rating scale and what that looks like. Highlight a couple of points of interest, and then talk briefly about what our team is going to do as a result of the results. So just taking a look first at our student survey, about 66% of our students in the Manitowoc Public School District took this survey, 2,127 students. The survey measures 8 indexes: connectedness, drive, citizenship, preparation, social emotional, wellness, career academics, and their experience. In this particular survey, students rate the questions on a 1 through 4 scale, 4 meaning always, 3 meaning usually, 2 sometimes, 1 never. All schools are represented in this data, and you can see the breakdown by grade, by school, and all of those things. As we move forward to the actual indexes, please keep in mind that those on the summary page, it shows connectedness scores of 2.8, drive 2.88, citizenship 2.87, preparation 2.84, social emotional 2.87, wellness 2.86, academic and career 2.84, and experience 2.83. Those are measured out of that 4-point scale. When you're looking at each individual item, the percent of always and usually are the combined percent to give you the results. And then we take it through and look at each section. I just highlighted a couple of things from each section. Typically, it's maybe one that we would look at and say that's probably pretty good, and then maybe one that was a little bit lower that we can take a look at, improving. Under the section of me for the students, 73% of our students report that they have positive relationships with at least one adult in the school, which is interesting because if you notice in the parent section, 90, or no, 80 some percent of the parents or 90% of the parents say their student has a positive relationship. So I'm just not sure if they're, the kids may be telling positive stories, but then not feel so positive. I'm not sure, but that was an interesting gap that I saw in the results. One of the areas under me was 39% of our students report enjoying going to school, which I thought was a little bit on the low side. Yeah, under the My Health section, 70% of our students report getting regular exercise. 57% say they get enough sleep, and 53% say they know how to cope well with stress. That was the lowest score in that particular area. It's actually one of the lowest, it typically is. I will point out that you're not seeing any comparison data with the student piece because that wasn't given those last year. So this is like a opportunity for baseline data, similarly to what our staff survey results were that were shared in August. Under my school, 80% report that one or more adults care about them and their future. 82% say they follow the rules, which I thought that was the highest reported section, and that was that the kids feel like they follow the rules. I wonder what the adult side would say, but 61% feel safe at school, which, you look at that one and say, you'd like that one to be a little bit higher. Kids, we want to provide our kids with a safe learning environment. Under my learning, 92% say that their parents expect them to do well. I think that's an important thing to point out. Oftentimes we hear, well, parents these days, well, if a student has a perception that their parents are going to hold them to some higher regard in terms of their education, that's a positive thing. In the same vein, only 51% of our students report setting goals. I think you may see a change on that with SFA, if I'm honest, because it's pretty data driven. The students are going to know where they stand in terms of their reading, and I think there's going to be an opportunity for some student goal setting in there as well. Under my free time, 72% of the students report being interested in clubs and sports, while 65% report that they do them. There's a gap there, if you notice. One of the things that we did at Lincoln, and as we work through these results with our principals and share some different practices, one of the things we did with this one at our school was we identified those students who said they're interested but aren't in them. And then we held a win session and then went through all of our clubs and organizations. So in the last year that I was there, we had 48 students from the 10th and 11th grade that we pulled out into a win, went overview of our clubs and organization, and as a result, 28 or 29 of those signed up for something and to be actively engaged in something. So sometimes these questions can show us that there's a gap somewhere and that there may be an opportunity to improve. Lastly, on the students survey, actually there's two sections. There's a section on equity. 71% of our students say that they can get help or support at school when they need it. And 52% say all students are treated fairly when rules are broken. There's also a section.
40.
Yeah.
Don't, yeah.
There's a section on preparation, which looks at how well the students feel they're prepared for college or life after high school, and how they're using their academic and career planning. And in those, that's 6th through 12th grade only that is measured there. And 56% of our students report that they feel like they're ready or getting ready for life after high school, while 53% report they use their academic and career plan to guide those decisions that they're making. In terms of plans after high school, we're looking at our students that this was just 11th and 12th grade students. They're saying 46% of them, they're pretty sure that they know what they want to do for a career or job. 26% report that they're unsure, and 7% say no clue. What do you plan to do immediately after high school graduation? Again, juniors and seniors say 41% four-year college, 16% two-year college, 13% to the workforce, 7% vocational or technical college, some apprentice, and then there's about 19% that are unsure, about 1% say the military. Does anyone have any comments or questions around the student survey results?
Lee, how did you, in the slide you showed us about X number of students want to participate in a club activity and then only X number actually did, how did you identify those kids to go into WIN that didn't participate?
So we did this same, so our goal was connectedness. That's where this one falls under. So what we did is we created our own Google Docs survey. And if a student said that they were interested in being in a club or sport, we then had that they also said that they weren't, but that they would be willing to. And so we took that and we can identify who they are, and then we call them out to participate in the WIN opportunity.
Okay, so
You can identify who they are because they tell you that they're interested, but they're not currently in one.
okay.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Okay, moving on to the parent survey section. Thing most to note on the parent one, I think, from my perspective, as I took a look at these, is that we only had about an 18% participation rate. That's rather low. In fact, if you notice in the memo, I put some things that we could possibly do as a team to really focus on. I think one of them has to be to double the respondents of this survey. If we're going to take the time and effort to put this survey out there and spend the resources, I think we have to have some return on that. The 18%, I'm not really so sure how, valid, 18% of the population is in terms. I think if you also noted, one thing you'll see in terms of the difference on this with the 18% versus the 66% of our kids is that the demographics change quite dramatically when you're looking at it. And I think that's.
Yeah, probably explains the gaps.
Correct. Correct. So if you're taking a look at also, from these results, where do our kids attend? This also shows some, potential disparity. Just as an example, if you look at, the high school being 20% of our population and students, they're getting 42% respondents. That's positive for them, but that also means that there's probably, proportionately less in other schools, just as a notation there. As we're looking at these survey results, the indexes are a little bit different. For the parent survey, they use a score of, there's a 5-point scale. So if you're looking at that, they go with a 5 is strongly agree, a 4 is agree, a 2 is a disagree, and a 1 is strongly disagree. I will also note, we have to be careful with these results because at times the parents also can say they don't know or it doesn't apply. I can give you an example on one of the low percentages was that they were satisfied with the school handling bullying complaints. And it was like 52% or something like that. Yeah, the issue is that there was this very significant that said that does not apply to them, which is why that was rather low. A very good percentage of people then would have be satisfied, but you just wouldn't know that because you didn't see the percentage who checked that. So there's a couple of those in here that I just would say we just have to be a little bit careful of because there was a significant number of those questions where some people just said, yeah, that doesn't apply to me. And so that might explain why a number might be a little bit lower. The parent survey indexes are culture of excellence, effective teaching, safe and healthy schools, leadership, sense of community, and equity. And as you'll see, based off of those scores, they're higher than the student scores because again, they're coming off of that 5-point scale. So just keeping that in mind as you're looking through that. In terms of some interesting data from the parent survey, if you add up, the data on this one, it's saying that 62% of them believe that our website provides them with timely and meaningful information. So if we're looking at that as a major way of us connecting with our families, a majority of our folks that took this are saying that they do use that. When we're looking at some individual item analysis around planning, 80% of parents report that my school's child provides information that's easy to understand. On the other side of that coin, we had a respondent rate of, gotta go back to that one, 57% say the goals and activities of the school's action plan were discussed. I point that out because I also think that this is an area that may go up as we're being a little bit more transparent and open about what types of student learning goals and objectives we have with our students. This will be one to watch for future years. Under school experience, there's a couple things to point out. 84% say that I have at least one school staff member that I feel comfortable contacting when I have an idea or concern. Another one on this one was that 78% of them feel comfortable contacting the principal. I also found it was interesting that the equal number of percent say that although they may not always agree with the principal, they believe that the principal's doing all they can to help make the school successful. Another thing to point out was the 95%. It's hard to get 95% of anybody to agree on anything, but that one was that the child has a positive relationship with at least an adult or more at school. I did want to point out again, as I did in the introduction to this, that the 59%, I believe, was on the bullying side. 20-some% had reported never having an issue with that, which is why it skews that number. Getting to academic expectations. 53% of our parents say that our academic expectations are just right. 38% report them being too low. And then there is a section on overall district satisfaction. 58% of the respondents reported that they're satisfied with the communication that comes from the district. On the lower side of that, 38% reported that the district runs effectively, and that 41% said the district is headed in the right direction. Last one I'll point out to you on this one. This is on a scale of 1 to 10. How likely would you be to recommend MPSD to a family or a friend? If you break down all of those and say that 6 and higher is a percent and 4 and lower is a percent, you're looking at 48% would recommend, while 28% wouldn't. Any comments or questions from the board on the parent results? And that concludes my report.
Okay, wonderful.
You think there were you think there were any sort of blind spots there? I mean, one of the things that struck me is in reading the staff comments, boy, the repetition of discipline is, really bad, and everything is disrupted, on a pretty regular basis, et cetera. There was no indication there that anybody found. There was, I don't know if you could have inserted that into any of the questions asked, but there was no indication at all that people were discontented with the environment. Or
That's a
could
good
you
question,
could you read that?
Well,
Could you read those results?
I think you can customize,
Yeah.
I believe, to ask specific questions. And if there was something that we were looking to get after in terms of what the kids or the parents were believing about any of these areas or categories, we could ask them to put those questions in. I think what we get with the school perceptions piece is these banks of questions that deal with each of those areas are used universally in their surveys, or at least in most of them, so that there's something to compare it to outside of your own district, which is something that we would be able to do as well. But so I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but I
this
think
survey
we-
seemed much more positive than the staff one. And
in terms of percent.
And I'm just wondering if they're perceiving the same environment.
Yeah.
Going forward, how do you plan on trying to get the response higher on the parent side?
Yeah, so we talked about that a little bit. I'm not sure what types of strategies all the schools are using. I would tell you that, and again, this is, the high schools ratio was higher.
Yeah, it's big.
We had some strategies that we employed to do that. And I think if we are working in a collaborative effort, we can share some of those strategies that I think we can boost those up in all the schools. In addition, if you noticed on the memo that I shared with you, there's some other things I think we can do with this information. We want to certainly work with principals for them to have an idea, especially with all the new principals. they want to see where were we at last year, because they're going to be very interested as to where we are at the end of this year. So that will be one thing, and we're going to brainstorm with them on some areas that they might want to focus on or have some strategies to employ to really measure the growth and progress of some of those areas. The second would be to brainstorm strategies to double the parent participation. And then the third would be, I think it's important maybe to pick out a couple of these things where we as the leaders of the district may say, gee, you know, I wish our perception about this was a little bit better than what we think it is. How do we potentially put some strategic communications together, include them in the newsletters that we send home quarterly or whatever we do I think we've done them quarterly in the past. I think last year was just 2 times a year. That's the MPSD Connections publication. I believe in talking to Lisa, she suggests we put that out in December, January, and then once again in the spring. I think it would be a good thing that we could highlight maybe just some article type things that would help maybe some of those areas in which we wish those perceptions match more of what we believe to be reality.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say it would be great. Oh, well, 2 things. One is I wanted to tell everybody, I sent to your email, I went through the past history, and we've done these surveys before. And I did find the parent survey from 2018. So I have the data all plotted. So it's in your email right now to everybody, and I'll make sure that I sent it to Lori too, so we can upload that to Board Book so the public can see it. Again, you got to take this with a grain of salt, because there were, like, we didn't start measuring equity until the 2020-2021 school year. So that was different. Some of the questions were different. Not many, but the areas of interest were the same. So, but I just thought this gives us years of data that we can see, and you can see that there's a steady decline in a lot of these since about they're all different, but 2019. And then we have some peaks. So I think it's interesting to see that historic data, and I have that for the students and also for the parents survey. So, and what I did not put in here though is the metrics. So you're not going to know how many people. I didn't have time to put all that in there, but at least gives you a rough idea. We're not totally comparing apples to apples, but at least it gives you an idea, because the indexes are about the same. So that's just another thing to be able to look at. And the second thing I was going to just say is with a committee structure, we probably would delve deeper into this. And so one of the things I thought was, could we have you guys to look a little deeper and just come up with maybe some strategic plans, sort of things interim prior to our launch in spring, just so we have an idea of what we're looking for, how we're going to measure, what we want those goals to be. Do we want to get such and such to a 4 or whatever? I mean, all of these fit into our strategic plan categories. Maybe there's some better questions that Perceptions has for us. Maybe it's better to do, our own internal one like Lincoln did. I don't know. I mean, I just think it would be a good report, maybe, in a month or 2, to come back and just, give us a little more detail on how we can get better, because, obviously there's, especially when it's low, right? Sad data is still good data to have to launch something forward. So that would be all I would ask, if we could just, do a little bit of that and just give us a little more
We have some.
interim.
Yep, were you gonna say something?
I just have a question for Lee. The 46% on parents feeling that their opinions are listened to, feel their opinions are taken into consideration. Is that another example of?
They're not as extreme as the bullying one, but a little bit, a double-digit one for sure. But yeah, but not as much as the.
I'm gonna let Jim talk, and then I'll have.
Just some things in terms of that really we have a better stage going into this year too. Reference was made to Success for All, because Success for All through their cooperative learning really pushes engagement by students more. So that's very much something that they'll have more ownership, they'll have more participation. with that, but also with SFA are the solution teams. And so one of them is family and parent involvement, and it's all about engaging parents more. The other thing is we launched the 2 meetings, which is the special ed parents and then the PTA presidents. Katie is helping me with the special ed. She already has a plan and we'll be releasing it. We changed the dates a little bit, but we'll be starting that in October. And so that's another vehicle. So we have vehicles that we didn't have before too. And reference was made, Lisa and I have since even talked where what we're probably going to do is launch a weekly e-newsletter to parents. You know, again, trying to increase the level of engagement communication lines. So I think that we'll find more areas to test things.
Sure, it's great.
And to develop strategies and to be able to, you know, track that. As well as increasing, we highlighted, you know, very low participation rate, you know, with the parents on this.
And
Less
maybe
than
there,
20%.
maybe there is a better way with the internal school, you know, with the solutions team, right? And the parent engagement, maybe there's something through SFA that has a better capture of collecting this information that would be better. I don't know. Just thinking outside the box. Yeah, yeah.
So on that same thought, I thought for brainstorming, would it be better to categorize it into high school, middle school, and elementary school? Because you had a high report on high school, which is great, but it would be nice to be able to differentiate where the parental and where the student, because you kind of lump it all together and then we kind of, it's not, I don't believe it's very as useful, because if you make it a successful change at the elementary level, we could report that or see that in the data instantly if we had, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel, we just have to ask one question before the survey saying, hey, does your, you know, interest come to the elementary level, middle school level, or high school level? And then that could show us where we're weak or where we're really strong, just to kind of have more live data instead of just having a range. And then we can improve where we're falling. It's just my brainstorming idea I see off the top of my head.
Okay, any other, yeah, Tony?
If we're gonna look at year-over-year data, which I think is great, I think it would be helpful to see the percentage participation for each year too.
Yeah. In my spare time, I'll add that. Seriously, I will. All right, any other comments about that? Thank you so much. And I agree with the return on investment, right? And this costs money, right? And if we really want to be using data in a meaningful way. And so, you know, if this isn't the best tool, you know, let's find out what is. So thank you for your work on putting this together, coming up with some options. Okay, and now we have our district activity update.
You know, a couple of things. One is included in your packet also are some of the athletic events that are going on this week that was in there, but some other things, we have SFA coaches in this week. Today was a specific day for coaching. And so we were talking about the solution teams. Now there's, I believe, 5 solution teams and most of the schools are starting with 3. I think there might be one with 4. But the training today was the attendance. And so every school has an attendance committee. And there's a solutions coordinator who is helping making sure all these committees are operating effectively. It's driven by quarterly goals and data. So, you know, when we get to parent and family involvement, when they launch that one, that will say, what's our goal for this quarter to get parents involved? And then they'll be measuring whether or not they succeeded in that quarterly goal. But anyways, going back to, so today's training was intervention. So it's saying some kids are just not where we'd like to have them. They're kind of the outliers that need more help. And so that training was, how are we going to identify these kids and what are we doing? So we had attendance, intervention, and cooperative
culture.
Cooperative culture, so getting along together, you know, and that was some of the initial training that we started with, putting structures in place. So, you know, going back to the staff survey and discipline and, you know, issues, even though there's some parallel because some students didn't feel as safe, you know, and there could be some association with there. So again, I think timing's really nice here in terms of, I think what have the opportunity to be able to get potentially a greater return, higher level of involvement.
And when you say coaches, are those the,
SFA people
coming
themselves.
from-
Right, so,
okay,
so they were
came
here.
into town?
And I would have to, and so really what's happening today was the only very training day. The other one is the coaches are assigned schools. So there are a number of coaches here. So they are going now to start walking through how you're going. And I would have to say, when I was talking to the SFA coach that was here training, but yesterday was at Jackson, they were totally impressed about how far ahead they think we are. But I'm not at all saying that this is an easy carry. This is heavy lifting, a lot of engagement, a lot more planning, in terms of, prep for their classes and stuff like this. The SFA people thought we were really at a higher level of engagement than they typically see. And that was just really nice to hear. And as I said, and we have survey information too, so we're collecting to see, how that training went, so.
Just one question about the activity or the athletics. Is there a master schedule for all the middle school too, or no? Is it just on the websites, or each website has one?
I believe each site has an R school, similar to the
Okay.
one where you go for the Lincoln
Sure.
one.
And that has-
Within that
Yeah,
school.
Okay, okay.
So that's all I have there. Oh, I will mention that when the coaches, I think one was staying at the Holiday Inn. And they were a little concerned because they saw these shepherds and police around and they thought that there might have been a raid. I guess there's a conference going on, and there was like 200 German shepherds in the area, but it was just, being very light, but it was to see all these German shepherds, and police around, so,
They couldn't be safer right now.
yeah, that's right.
Okay, all right. Well, let's, no unfinished business. We'll move on to the new business, which is our first read of several policies. And our first one is 2260.02. And this was our services for bilingual students, English learners. I'll just go around like I did. Chris, was there anything that concerns, anything you want to talk about with regard to this policy?
No.
Okay. Biff?
I'm good.
Okay. Right, I had several. One of them was in the first section there where it says, where we pick the word district shall be responsible for taking account of limited English proficient students. I wondered if that should be a person. I know that, I think we changed, I saw later, EL coordinator, or I just wondered if that should be a designated
Position.
role. So what would you guys suggest we put
I
in?
go with the L coordinator.
EL coordinator, okay. And then. Oh, and then I know, Lee, you and I talked about this, but the little parentheses, were those options?
Yes.
They are.
Yes.
And so since they're not checked, those will be removed?
Correct.
Correct. Okay, so the only one that is gonna be in there is B? Is that correct? Or Heidi, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so B would be the only item that would be in there.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and then the only other thing was in the counseling services for students who are, this is the very second to last page. One of the things I wondered in there was, it doesn't say any, there's another place where it says interpreter, but I wondered if, oh yeah, here, the counselor should attempt to utilize an interpreter to assist in discussion regarding to these matters. That's what I was wondering, is if there's an interpreter also that helps the student, if there's a barrier there.
Me too.
Okay, perfect. Because I didn't know if that needed to be said higher up, but I know it's at the end there. It talks about the parent, it just doesn't talk about the student. I don't know if that's important to have that in black and white, but everyone knows that that's what we do. Um, Okay, I think that was all I had. Anything?
Very good.
Tony?
Good.
Okay. Gary?
Fine.
Okay. All right. Excellent. If we could just have a motion and a second to approve just changing that one section where it says the district to EL coordinator.
Yeah. So,
Okay, so moved by Chris, seconded.
I'll second.
Okay, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Perfect. So we'll move that on to our second read. Our next one is the PO 2261. And this is our Title I services. And Chris, anything here?
No.
Biff?
I'm good.
And again, just a question on the participation piece. One of the questions I had was, do we need, since we do have a charter school, under participation, do we need to mark that? Yes, we should have that marked. Okay.
Yes, it's noted there too.
Yeah, so since we have McKinley, so we would mark that participation, that the charter school would also be participating in Title I if we had that, correct? Okay, perfect. I think that was all that I saw on that one. Matthew?
Nope, your
Okay,
turn.
Tony?
Good.
I'm good.
Carrie?
good, yeah.
Matthew?
That's okay.
Okay, great. All right, so if I could have a motion in a second just to amend this to also select the charter school option in letter C.
I'll second it.
Okay. Seconded by Tony. Okay, perfect. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then policy 2460, this is students with, programs for students with disabilities. Is there any, Chris, do you have anything there?
My only question on that one was, do we need to specify when we will approve the handbook?
Okay,
You know, should it be something we have set up to always approve in August, so we know it's in place by the school year or what? But I would defer to these guys.
okay.
There are two other times throughout the year when we have special education specific topics to present to the board that are required. So in August is the seclusion and restraint report from the previous year, so we could do it during that time. Or in January, we have open enrollment capacity that we discuss, so we could do it during that time. That way there would be just two similar topics to discuss.
Okay,
Yeah, so you don't think it's necessary to signify?
okay.
I think as long as we're saying, yes, we are using the practices, protocols, policies, guidelines set forth by the DPI on an annual basis.
Okay, so I'm good.
She answered my question.
Okay, perfect.
Just a general statement, what we're working on before, but because of how we're trying to make our meetings more efficient and clarity in terms of what we're discussing and to move some things to consent, what we're working now on is trying to populate the school agendas for the whole year. Not that there wouldn't be other items, but so that everybody has a sense about what's going on.
And I asked Lee about the handbook, and it sounds like there really isn't a handbook, but rather just following the guidelines that DPI is giving us. Okay, so wonderful. So we'll just make sure that that's added as an option to one of those meetings. Is it, how often, I guess, does DPI change those things that August would be better starting a school year?
Sometimes there are annual updates, sometimes there are not.
Okay.
Depends on form changes or legal requirements that are coming out through the federal government, through IDEA as well. So it just depends on, they're not always annual updates. We would just say, I think we would acknowledge as a board on an annual basis that we're following DPI guidance.
Okay. Excellent. Matthew, anything?
Nope.
Tony?
Good.
Okay, Carrie?
Yeah.
Matthew?
I just like to identify this as a great policy representing the whole community. If any needs are needed anywhere else with the community, that we identify, locate, and evaluate all children from the age of 3 and up. It's a great thing for the whole community.
And I noticed too that when I was looking at the previous policy, it didn't have the thing with the handbook and the board approval, did it? Okay,
They, as Neola updates things,
Yeah.
they, you know, that you'll find, especially in some of ours that are a little bit more out of date.
Yeah.
That's what Jim was talking about in reference to, well, we're probably an update or two behind on some of them.
sure,
That was just something that they added on this one.
okay. Okay, well, there's no changes to that, so we'll just move that to the second read. Okay, our next one is PO 5630.01, and this is the use of seclusion and physical restraint with students. And Chris, anything?
I'm good.
Okay, Biff?
My only question would be to Katie that this is probably one of the situations you don't want to be in as a special educator or a school. This is a tough law. Are you comfortable with this? I know from year to year, it's,
Yes, I think this specifically follows very closely what DPI guidance will say and what our practices and policies that we've updated in the most recent years are. So, knowing that this is sort of one of the ugly parts of the reality of our job, I feel like we do a good job of training our staff. This helps support our staff, I feel like, so in those challenging situations where we, absolutely last resort have to be more physical with students that are a danger to themselves or others, then I do feel like this is a very comprehensive policy that covers.
I bring it up because I really want we as the board to understand that these situations in school are serious and sometimes we have to handle them in ways that we wish we didn't. But
Okay, I was wondering how frequently this policy is implemented or applied.
We get a
Well, we get a
report every year.
report.
In
We do get,
August,
yeah,
so-
that's right, we
yeah,
do get a
we had
report.
25 incidents last year.
thank you for that.
Yeah, thank
Thanks, Biff.
Yeah,
One of the things under second page, where it's under parental notice and written report requirements, and then under end of option, so that last part there, it says, in addition, the school's principals will be required to prepare and present an annual report to the board by October 1st. I wondered if the pupil services director, I wonder if Katie, this was something better represented by you versus the school principals, but just throwing that out there.
Principal shall prepare this written report.
She's normally the one that presents it to us, though.
Meet with the, so I did not interpret this that they are presenting. I think in this section, it's talking about having the conversation with the family, the participants involved in the incident of seclusion and restraint, and having a debriefing in order to cover the details of the incident and then making a plan as follow-up.
Okay,
But it says,
Report to the present.
it says annual report to the board,
Oh, so we could change, in the school principals will be required to prepare and present an annual. That's my responsibility typically, so we could just change that language.
that's what I was thinking would
That's
be
fine.
more appropriate probably than having our
Yep.
school principal.
Sorry, my apologies, I didn't see that.
No, that's okay. And then, is this different than the report that you do for us? Or is this the same one that you're doing?
The same.
Okay. And you always do that in the fall?
We just take care of it in August before the school year starts, but it has to happen prior to October 1st.
Perfect, okay. And then the only other thing I wanted to just, and I guess this was a question, about that last line there. Annually, by December 1st, the board shall submit its report to the state superintendent. That's something that you do, okay?
So we'll probably take care of that in the coming weeks, but prior to this December 1st date, we just have to submit our official report to the state of Wisconsin. They have a couple of documents through an online report data portal that we have to submit things through.
And I just didn't know whether or not, since the board really doesn't submit that and we don't sign anything, right, on that report. I know we have it in our minutes that we've accepted it. I just didn't know if, for clarity, if the district administrator is the one that actually submits the report.
We could say the LEA or their designee, we could change that language. The superintendent or their designee.
This would be that very last thing, right before it goes into IEPs. It just says annual by December 1st, the board shall submit its report to the state superintendent.
The only thing I'm wondering is perhaps the law says that the board has to do it and really it's it's
where
being
under
executed
age
by.
Of the board, but you know, it's the
Yeah.
We could
board's-
look into that if
Yeah.
to make sure
Okay.
that we. Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we look in that just to make
Okay.
sure, you know, I mean, because I'm sitting here going, geez, I didn't do that.
On
No, I
behalf of
did
the
it.
board, this, yeah.
Right, just
Jim
something.
will be notified that that's coming due, so.
Okay. Yeah, just let's talk about that a little bit maybe next time. And then this was just a question I wanted to bring up. You know, we're always talking about accountability. And I know when it comes to training, and I know we do that often, and we maintain a record of it. And this happened very similarly with our safety training. You know, it was, you know, the board, to me, it's micromanaging to have to look at this stuff all the time. But how do we ensure that it's happening, right? Because at the end of the day, we're the ones that are responsible.
In terms of these reports and stuff like this. that they're being
I was
submitted, or-
I was talking about the one about the training, that we maintain a record, like how do we, I'm just sort of like that trust but verify, how do we know that that's happening? And I'm just bring that up as a discussion item, I don't know.
I wanted to piggyback off that exact kind of line of thinking about the training, about kind of not so much of trying to prepare our staff correctly so that they're prepared for this to actually happen. I understand it says mandatory training for staff as like a requirement that, you know, we need to train them correctly. However, I've heard a lot of people, it's like, it's a shock that this stuff has to happen. So if we were more proactive on the training about how physical this can get, because the turnover is quite high because of this kind of stuff. So like, and this might not be for everybody to be you know, a paraprofessional in this particular side of the field. So that's something, if we could forewarn them before an incident happens where they get hurt, because I'm trying to protect the staff at this point, saying, hey, if they're going to be doing restraints, we need to make sure that we preload, that they're prepared for not just the safety side of the restraint so that it's lawful, but protecting them, you know, as they're in those fields. So I'm just trying to, that was my point I wanted to bring up, but you kind of, it started it already, but that's my thinking. Is it appropriate to bring it up now, or would it be a different policy? But
Well, I know that, you know, I asked Lee, I mean, it's extensive, the training that we do. It's just that the board doesn't know. And, you know, I would hate for a situation to come up where somebody wasn't in the log. And I mean, this is, you know, and in my field working in the nuclear industry, right? I mean, there are logs, and I know we do that. I know we do it with safety too. I'm just wondering if there should be, like during the restraint thing, that these are the trainings we did this year, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't know. Or is it just that, you know, we've been doing it like this for so long. I don't know that there's anything wrong with it. It was just a question to.
Yeah, we utilize a company called the Crisis Prevention Institute. It's probably one of the only safety and training companies and corporations in the country. It's widely utilized by schools and healthcare facilities, residential care facilities all over the country. So through CPI, there is a database that we are required to update with every training. So I can assure you that every single special education staff member in our school district participates in the full nonviolent crisis intervention training. All of that includes components of de-escalation strategies and some of those proactive things, Matt, like you were speaking of, in regard to prevention strategies and what to do before, because ultimately a physical restraint or an act of secluding a student really has to be because there's imminent danger to that student. They're a danger to themselves or others. And it teaches risk analysis through this training so that you can weigh the risk of actually engaging in a physical restraint and then employing different de-escalation strategies. All of our staff the past few years have been trained in the first components of the nonverbal de-escalation strategies. Lynette Seminar has done that to provide teachers that wouldn't necessarily be part of these types of more physical encounters and as the result of students with more significant needs or disabilities, but they have the nonverbal of de-escalation training. They learn how to communicate, recognize anxiety, put themselves in a position of supporting students rather than escalating behavior, and a number of good quality trainings. So I know Lee had answered your question. We do 3 formal or initial trainings throughout the year, and then our staff are required to participate in refresher trainings on a biannual basis. So we have a system of getting those refreshers, and our team goes right to the building. And so much credit to our program support team and a number of teachers in our district who are the trainers. It is extensive and costly to be a trainer of nonviolent crisis intervention. But if we have a database, I guess is the very short, I could have just probably said that. But it's important to know because it's a very big deal and our staff take it very seriously and they understand the risk that is involved. But if we want to include a report on an annual basis about number of participants when those trainings happen, that would be very easy to do. I'd be very happy to do that.
Does anyone feel strongly that that has to happen, or am I just?
Seems like it's institutionalized pretty fully, isn't it?
I mean, it says that the superintendent has a log, so if something happens and we need information, it's there.
Okay.
And we have so many different areas. Obviously, this is a more extensive one, but there are a lot of reporting responsibilities. Some things even are computerized where people who have to take even online training, it's different. You know, we get prompts, to the extent that we're tracking people who aren't completed. So
Well,
I think we've got
I
some.
had Mike send me last year when we went through the safety, I had him send me all the things and it was like a page after page after page. I felt good about knowing about it all. Okay, my only other question on this one was when it comes to disciplinary action for a violation of this policy, one of the phrases I did not, or the words here I did not understand was board employee. Because they do not define what a board employee is in this document. Now they refer to covered entities, but I, what is a board employee?
Somebody whose contract we voted on, I
Is
guess.
that anybody through the district? I'm assuming it's staff, right?
District staff.
Anybody employed by the district.
Yep.
That's the way I took it.
What happens if a volunteer in our building does something? Is that part of this policy? Would that be a violation for them or not?
Any individual who is not trained cannot engage in any incident of restraining or secluding a student.
Okay.
They have to be trained. We have enough team members in our buildings and individuals who are trained that those people tap out, they make phone calls, they assist in a crisis situation in other ways.
Okay.
We put our most trained, our most comfortable, our most experienced are the ones that are typically responding in these situations.
Okay.
Katie, I would believe that if we were having a sub coming into a classroom, we're gonna know whether or not there's any things to be alerting, to the extent that we have that covered relative to no sub's gonna come into an area that we are putting them at risk of violating this.
Or an unknown situation.
So,
Typically put our subs in, we move our experienced staff that have relationships with students into those vacancies. Sometimes if there's a need for sub, and then we put a sub in a different classroom that would have less likelihood of a crisis can happen, or, you know, an escalated student can happen in any situation, but we try to avoid that at all costs. Be proactive.
Okay, thank you. Anything?
No.
Tony?
I'm good.
Okay, Carrie? And Matthew, you already said yours. Okay. All right, so I guess the only thing we would change here is on page 2. I'd look for a motion in a second to change where it says the principals to pupil services director.
Motion to approve that amendment.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Okay, perfect. Okay, and then we will move on to our introduction to suggested policy revisions.
So for introductions this evening, there's a few more. I think we're starting to, so we're gonna bump it up a little bit. We have policy 2411, school counseling and academic career planning. We have policy 5310.01, emergency nursing services. We have policy 5350, student suicide prevention. We have policy 5451.01, Wisconsin Academic Excellence Scholarship. We also have 5451.02, the Technical Excellence Higher Education Scholarships. We have 5771, Search and Seizure, and 5772, Weapons. And again, those policies are being introduced. And if you have, as you get a chance to peruse those, if you have questions, I know I've received on some of these some questions from several board members. I appreciate that because it gives me collectively, we usually find the answers, but we're not all individual experts on all these policies. So it's helpful to have a little heads up sometime with what questions you may have. So again, those are the policies up for introduction this evening.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Okay. And then okay, so we'll be looking those for a first read for those next time. The only remark I had was I sent out the survey to everybody about what everyone wanted, their preference was for the parade. I didn't get everyone's response. I didn't get one from Carrie.
Oh, it did go through. It was
Yeah.
sort of a difficult step.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know.
But what was your?
Well, it tried to deny me like external communication.
Oh.
So,
Which one did you want to do? Or do you
well,
need to see?
I think the board should be together. I'm not gonna be there for it, but.
Okay,
you
so,
know,
because you'll be
I think
gone next week.
I think the board should be together.
I think the board should be together, not me, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's been planned for a long time ago. The reason I can't, my not being here was planned before the parade. Yeah.
Just joking.
Right. Yeah, and it's broken up into decades, and I know like 3 of us on here also, are alumni too, so. Biff, did you have a preference?
I have been asked to,
Stay away from me.
to possibly drive a dear old friend who's in the parade, so I may be doing that.
Okay, all right. So that leaves, and then Matt, you're.
I'll proxy for Carrie, we'd be together.
We want to be together.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the majority really was to be together, so I'll arrange something like I did last year that we can get together and get that out to everybody.
Yeah. Did we vote on the?
Okay. All right, and then the only other future meeting date that I have at this time is October 10th, would be our next board meeting. That's also when we.
What was it in the
talk about our
consent
budget.
agenda?
Budget hearing at 5:30.
At 5:30, okay. So prior to our meeting then, the budget hearing would be, and then we would start after that or at 6 o'clock.
No, I don't have any objection.
Are there any,
I have a question.
if there's no other business, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, everyone.
That means the consent.
7.
I don't know where it stops.